a red flag flying here.
Hello, welcome to Socialist Think Tank. Today I am speaking to Crispin Flintoff, who has done many things in the Labour Party, including Stand Up for Labour. Crispin, hi, how are you doing?
Hi Paul, I'm good. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, well, you're always welcome. So you've done so much in the Labour Party stuff, and I'm sure you have many friends around the country who'd be really interested in hearing from you tonight. But what I'm going to start off by asking is what I ask everyone, really. To you, what is socialism?
It's a good question. I mean, there's lots of answers to that. I mean, you could be Marxist and stuff, talk about the economy, but for me, it's a belief that we're all equal, really. We were born equal. We're not born, and we're human beings. Everyone's a human being. We're not. Status doesn't exist beyond that. To me, that's what socialism's about. To me, is we just don't separate people into top and bottom when you're born, and the way we are brought up after we're born is quite a horrible experience for many people who realise they're not in the top and other people are. And socialism has a lot to do with property and money and capital and all the stuff that Karl Marx talks about. But my favourite philosopher when I was studying philosophy was Rousseau, who would write about we were all happy together as a species until one person decided to get a piece of rope and put it round a piece of land and say, "This is mine." And as soon as that happened, everything started to go wrong. It's an allegory. It's not a true story. He's just presenting a story of how, as a society, we've developed property and in terms of, and then class and the other things that come with it. Socialism, to me, is a vision of us living equally as much as we were born. So we're born equal, and we should live and have the same opportunities as each other and enjoy the world and all that it has to offer in that way. And that's the other thing is life should be enjoyable. Life should be about excelling and being creative and love, and all these positive things that people have should be at the fore. And that's as well, I think, a lot to do with socialism is talking about the good qualities of people. It does have a Christian element to it as well, because obviously morality and good and evil has that ring to it. And Jesus Christ was obviously talking about things that sounded pretty socialist when he said, "Love thy neighbour as thyself." And the Sermon on the Mount is very much socialist. And I think that resonates in the labour movement. There's a lot of Christian socialism. There's a lot of Marxist socialism. And there's a whole history of socialism in this country that's gone on for centuries and centuries. It's not a new thing. It might not have been called socialism at the time, but this idea that we're all equal is a very old idea. To me, it is a bit about faith. It is a bit about faith. It is about, this is what we should be working towards. And we're going to have setbacks on the way, but we have to keep pushing towards socialism.
It's really interesting that you went down the faith route there, and that's something I didn't particularly expect. But it's a really nice way to look at it. I think maybe, like, is that just a Christian thing, or do you think there are many faiths? Because we have all sorts of different people involved in the Labour Party. We have Jewish people and Muslim people and Buddhists and Hindus and all these. Do you think that also feeds into the idea of socialism?
Well, I'm just really talking about how I got to be influenced by Christianity. I mean, my family are Quakers. A lot of my family are Quakers, so which is a pretty socialist way of living, because they're pacifists and they believe in honesty. I know that if you have a faith in a God, then you will see that all people are equal anyway. It's a kind of part of most religion. I can't imagine any religions that say some people are better than others. All religions regard each individual as equal. Somehow or other, that doesn't translate into politics sometimes. I don't really know why. I mean, God is bigger than all of us, and we are just equally small, and that's pretty much what I think religion was about, really.
So you mentioned there, like you had family who were Quakers and things. Is that where you think your socialism came from? Did you know that you were a socialist from an early age?
Yes, I do think it came a lot from that. Yeah, I think you are influenced by your family and your upbringing. My mum would cry if I was dishonest. My parents were always thinking about other people and how things were for them, and this kind of self-seeking thing wasn't really it's part of me, because I was discouraged from thinking that way. Yeah, the pacifism was part of my upbringing as well. I am a pacifist. I don't go around telling people in pubs, though. It's not a good idea because you get hit. But I am, you know, it's not that I don't practice as a Quaker, but I have been influenced by some of those ideas, definitely, yeah.
So it's interesting as well that you say that. We've also got, like, within the labour movement, you've probably got some quite staunch atheists as well. So it seems to be like socialism is something that people can feel, you know, that they can get into, whether from different religious backgrounds, and that backs them up. And would that be what your philosophy background would tell you as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, the existential side, the Sartre and people like that, they were all socialists as well, and they thought God was just a construct of capitalism, effectively, as Marx was sort of saying that religion is the opium of the masses. I believed that for a long time. I believed that religion was oppressive, but I don't think it necessarily has to be. I think some faith is good, and not believing that we're the centre of the universe is a pretty good thing to have as well. Because I mean, I don't have a religion, but I do believe that there is a higher power. There's something bigger than me. If I thought I was God, that would be dangerous.
I think there's a few people who who we might have met over times that might have thought they were God. So how did you created Stand Up for Labour? So how did that come about?
Well, it's it's quite a long story. I mean, it's a long story, and but you talk about socialism. We, as a species, can't really do well if we're in isolation. We suffer if we isolate, if we're not in fellowship of some sort. And I think one of the weaknesses of the Labour Party has been that it's not engaged people, not brought people together enough, and not lifted people's spirits in that way. When I went to my first Labour meetings, there was no one, hardly anyone there to start with, but also all the social events were really not very encouraging, not very exciting. not inspiring. So I'd done a bit of stand-up comedy. I did stand-up comedy when I nearly got killed in the bomb in Tavistock Square in 2005. I wasn't very far from when it blew up the bus in the 7/7 thing. And I went to therapy for it, and I got into this therapist suggested I do something that was kind of that I've enjoyed doing, and I like making people laugh. So I started doing a stand-up comedy course, and then I did a comedy gig in a pub in Soho, above a pub, and I'd never done this before, and I just was so buzzing when I did this gig and people laughing, and I came off the stage. I just felt so excited about what I'd done, and that guy, what's his name? He's the Scottish comedian who's he's very big now. He's from Glasgow. Bridges, Kevin Bridges. Yeah, he was doing the same gig as me. He was like the headliner, and I was one of the middle acts. And I talked to him after, and he just said, "I just keep gigging." So I just did. I just kept doing these gigs. I did like 4 or 5 gigs a week, and I got quite good at it. And I started to hear my own voice doing it. I started off maybe being like someone else, but then I started to be who I was, and then I got the connection with the audience got really good. It's something about if you are who you are, then people actually warm to you. So I was doing all that, and then my partner at the time, she had a baby, and I couldn't do it anymore, so I stopped. And then I joined the Labour Party because I kind of thought I've got to look after my baby. What's the world going to be like for my baby? And then I just thought, when I went to this meeting, they said, let's do a fundraiser. I thought, well, I'm going to do a comedy night because that connects people in a different way. So I did put on a comedy night for my constituency and raised some money and did it again 6 months later, I think, and it got even more people in there. More people turned up. Then I did a gig that was that I got Ken Livingstone and Arthur Smith as the 2 main headliners on it. And Ken Livingstone had just lost the London mayoral election. So I thought we should do a gig to thank Ken Livingstone for what he'd done and to show him he's appreciated. This is some trait I've got. I keep picking up this trait of trying to show older people that we love them, because I feel that that's a thing that doesn't happen enough. Is we should, when people retire, we should show them that they're loved and not leave them in isolation. It must be horrible if you've had all the adulation and you lose it. So anyway, Ken Livingstone and Arthur Smith, such a big lineup that it sold out. The tickets sold out. It was packed, 200 and more people in this venue, and it was such a buzz. Everyone was loving it. The crowd were just Labour members that I'd seen who were always arguing with each other from different factions, different beliefs, different cliques. They were all laughing in common. They were all having a great time, and they were laughing at each other as well. So like one of them would come up on the stage and then they'd all jeer him, and then another one. It was like taking the edge off it. It was a pantomime. It was a pantomime of people having little local rivalries, and people in that audience wanted me to do shows for them, other constituencies. So I just said, okay, sure. So I started to do them, and then I just loved doing them, and people kept wanting me to do them. So this was like 2013, and I just did like 100 gigs in about 2 years or 2.5 years. Like unbelievable output. I was working as well at the time. So I'd do a day job and then I'd go off and do a gig. Or I even had someone else who was doing the gigs for me. So I get someone else. And there's one night I did 3 gigs in one night, 2 other people doing it, and I was doing one. And I was really enjoying it. And it did seem to make a difference to the morale. And we didn't win the election in 2015. But my analysis of that, I learned more as I got on. I mean, I thought what I was doing with Stand Up for Labour would be acknowledged by the party centrally because it had no negative. It was just bringing people together and they were having a good time and they were raising money. So I couldn't really understand why the main party wasn't supporting it. I mean, they even asked me to pay £1,800 to have a stand at conference in which to tell people in different constituencies that I could offer them this thing that would make them money. I had to pay £1,800 to help raise money for the Labour Party. And I couldn't understand why. So after, if you don't mind me carrying on, I'll just finish it off. I mean, after 2015 election, I mean, I was going to jack it in after 2015. I thought that was the target, the Labour to win in 2015. But then Jeremy Corbyn, I was part of Stop the War because I did a, like I say, I like these older people being acknowledged for being older and bit. I wanted a Tony Benn acknowledgement. So I did this Tony Benn celebration for Stop the War. And I realised, because Stop the War was his big cause. So the money went to Stop the War. And that's where I met Jeremy Corbyn. When he said he was standing to be leader, I thought this was a bit of a laugh because I had nothing to lose. The Labour Party was never going to give me any support. After all I'd done, I thought there's no point. I might as well just do what I can to support Jeremy Corbyn. So I put on a gig with him in London, and it was his first gig that he spoke at in London, and it was over it overfilled the capacity and was a danger to health and safety. The number of people there was just unbelievable, and the vibe was incredible. The magic of this gig, I'd never known anything like it. People just drunk on just each other's company and Jeremy Corbyn being a possible leadership candidate and how naughty we were to even think of Jeremy Corbyn being the leader. I mean, I did a joke on the stage saying, we're doing a raffle or something. And I said, yeah, you can have tea on the terrace with Jeremy Corbyn, or something like that, at some kind of raffle thing like that. And then you could knock on the door of Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell. And everyone was laughing because I'd added this thing about John McDonnell being the Shadow Chancellor. And everyone was just going, this is really funny. John McDonnell is Shadow Chancellor. Anyway, it just went, as we know, it just got bigger and bigger. And then when he was elected leader, I thought the party would change then. I thought we'd have a real engaging party, central party, out with the grassroots, grassroots supported and new energy. But I wasn't included I wasn't given any break by the people in Corbyn's team. But I carried on anyway. Because I had to support Jeremy Corbyn. He's the best leader that we've had that I can remember in my lifetime. But I did realise that the Central Party is actually, it doesn't matter if you've got a left-wing leader or Ed Miliband or whoever. They want control. They don't want to give the power to people outside the centre. And it was then that I realised that the funding of the party was kind of crucial to that, was that the CLPs get £2.50 per year per member, and the main party gets £47 something per year per member. The accounts that show that the main party is sitting on masses of reserves. They earn money from property that they've taken from CLPs. CLPs have no rights to property. Now, if I'm looking at this from a kind of Marxist view, you see that the party, you've got people who've got power and money in the centre. And do they want to give that away? Would they? Would you? Would anyone? I mean, I would. I mean, from my background is that, but many people, when they have a position and they're earning a good wage and it all looks good, they're not going to give that up. They're not going to say, no, we don't need this money. We have to give this out to those who do need it. I think the party's been taken over by bureaucrats who just sit on their jobs and don't think about the greater good of the movement. The movement is what I thought the Labour Party was about. It's a movement of people all over the country who have to fight like hell to get their message across, because the media are never going to let us get there. Now, I've talked for probably too long. I don't know. But I just thought I'll give you the Stand Up for Labour story, because that's really what it is. It's about me coming to terms with the fact that the party doesn't support the grassroots, and I wasn't politicised about that until the hard experience of putting on now 250 shows, where I've had I get home at 4 a.m. You know, I had to get up and take my daughter to school at 8 o'clock. You know what it's like as a parent. It's like going to bed at 4 and doing that all the time. I mean, look at the state of me. You know, this is what you look like when you are battered by the Labour Party when they don't support you. And I was disappointed with what happened with Jeremy Corbyn, because I just think we had an opportunity, but we have to learn from those things. We have to build on our experiences. If things don't work out, we have to look at why, and we have to find out how we can stop that happening again and how we can improve. So I don't blame Jeremy Corbyn or anyone for it not working out with him. I just think these things happen, and we have to keep going.
It's interesting there when you talk about that time and like that fun that you've had at those gigs, and I think when you're all having fun together and you're all enjoying yourself and you're working towards something, I think that comes across to the electorate really. I think in 2017 we were really positive and hopeful, and over time what happened is that hope sort of drained away into almost being very, very defensive. The Labour Party felt like we're under attack at all times, and when it came to 2019, it just didn't feel like there was that hope there that we'd become used to and that we'd fought for from 2015, where you were all up and you really wanted something good to happen. You felt like you were just under siege all the time. Do you think that had a really detrimental effect on the party's chances in elections?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I say, but the spirit is so important. The spirit of people. It's not just the money. It isn't about how much money you've got in the bank. I mean, this is me personally. It's not. It doesn't matter about how much money I've got in the bank or how many miles I can run, jog, whatever, or how healthy I am. It's my spirit. If I have a good spirit and I'm feeling the world is with me and everything seems to burn, then I will get up and I'll be just the best person to be around, right? If I feel depleted, fed up of the world, and don't think there's anything worth living for, nobody wants to talk to me. We radiated enthusiasm and hope and joy and camaraderie, and that magic that I spoke about in that first fundraiser was so tangible. People are just attracted to that kind of spirit, and that's what we had. And that was what did us so good in that 2017 election. And what happened after that, it is my opinion, is we tried to play politics and not play with the spirit. The spirit was, all we had to do was harness that spirit, keep that spirit, and we would have won. We would have won. Whatever our Brexit strategy, in a way, if the spirit was right, we wouldn't have gone down those roads anyway with the Brexit thing. I don't want to get caught up in that thing, but anyway, it is about the spirit. If you look at Tony Blair and winning in 1997, all people can think about is the spirit of him winning. Things can only get better. Him putting his, going to wave at the crowds and all that. They don't think about what he said, particularly. They don't think about any policies he talked about. They just think about this spirit of optimism that people had in 1997. And I think that's what we just need to capture in the Labour Party. We have to have this enthusiasm, this kind of camaraderie that everyone wants to be part of the party. If we can make the Labour Party attractive because we are such people that people want to be with us, then we'll be unstoppable. The party centrally don't seem to understand that. They think it's about manipulating the public and trying to sound right. You can't try and sound right. You never can. It comes across as dishonest. If you genuinely feel connected with someone, they will go with you. And sometimes you could say that no politicians have that spirit. None of them are good. But with the Tories, you kind of know that they're not playing the good game. They're not socialists. They don't believe in equality. They are quite clearly people who have a view that if you some people do well in life and some don't do well in life, and that's the way it goes. Now, at some points in life, some people are going to think, yeah, that sounds about okay. If Labour can't come up with a spirit of, no, we're all really important together, we are a community, we are one, we're all equal, then they'll do well. But I don't get, this is the problem actually, I don't get the feeling that the top of the party behaves like that. Does the top of the Labour Party project the idea that we're all equal? Do they project the idea that normal members are as equal as MPs? Do they project the idea that that everyone in the party is equally important? No, I don't think so. And I think it's like they're in the wrong. No, I'm not going to say that. I didn't say anything.
It's a lot of what you say, I think, will really, really resonate with people, because even in Sedgefield, obviously, you know that I'm from Sedgefield CLP, and I speak to people who were here in 1997. And it's very funny because you get these different conversations, and it wasn't really about being like, you know, a right-wing thing within the Labour Party and a neoliberal thing. That wasn't what people talked about at the time. People talked about hope, and people talked about mass membership. And the plan was to, for the party to have 1 million members. That was Tony Blair's plan. And they had this Sedgefield plan that he'd set up, where they were trying to get everyone, as many people as possible, to become members of the Labour Party locally. And they had a really vibrant Labour Party locally. and there were some real lessons to learn from that. And it's quite interesting because some people have said that recently within the party in Sedgefield, we've had more of that spirit, and that's what's important, you know. So that's what had somehow waned over time, and it's really interesting. So I'm often, despite the fact my politics are nowhere near Tony Blair's, I don't like to particularly stamp on everything that he's ever done, because they did do something quite special here, and it's difficult to say that when you know some people within who did those things have done some terrible things since to people I care about, and written to the Daily Mail and said that like these people I care about are awful, dreadful people, and things like that. And I don't know where that went, because it was all enthusiasm for years. And I think you're absolutely right about that kind of enthusiastic feel. I want to talk about at the moment, with the coronavirus crisis and everything that went on. Despite everything you've gone through, you seem to have felt like you've taken a bit of a kicking, losing the elections, and then not being acknowledged for what you're doing, and then asked to pay for things to help the Labour Party, which is a really strange situation. But despite all that, from Stand Up for Labour, and all the connections you have through that, during the coronavirus crisis, you decided to set up Stay Home for Labour. You decided to change things around. How did that come about?
Well, like this thing about people isolating, if people isolate, then they lose their mind. People lose their mind. I think a lot of people are losing their minds at the moment, actually, because they're not connecting with each other. And so yeah, I heard about this Zoom thing. My brother was doing something with Zoom, and he invited me to go on Zoom. Like, I think it was the day that we were supposed to stop going out or whatever. And I thought this was quite funny. I thought, how could we use this thing? So I looked at how you could use it, and I thought, let's do just a mad show with everyone who I know from all over the country saying hello to each other. And it was a real disaster. I mean, I didn't know how to mute anyone. Everyone was unmuted. People were just going, what's going on? It was like crazy. Hundreds of people all saying, what's going on? And then eventually I got better at knowing how to mute people. But I like the chaos. I like the chaos of having hundreds of people on a Zoom call, not having just 4 special people. Like, everyone could see each other, so they could all scroll and see each other. And I tried to make it like it was like a learning experience, the whole thing. It was just like trying to get people to have a laugh. And so it was mainly about laughing at the beginning, but then some of these issues came up that I thought needed to be addressed, like the policy on rent, and whether people who paid rent should have to pay it and lose their private landlords threatening people with eviction if they couldn't pay money because they didn't have furloughed money or whatever. And then there was food poverty, some serious amounts of food poverty going on. I thought it wasn't being spoken about on the media. I mean, no one was talking about food banks and how the demand was going through the roof. So I started doing discussions, and then I realised that because I had all these people watching from all over the country, I could actually get more information about what's happening than any other organisation, because Labour's got people all over the country. I could find people everywhere to say what's happening where they are. And then I just kind of got hooked on that, thinking, well, why don't we just do the proper news almost, like what's going on, that the news, they're not telling us about food poverty, they're not telling us about, so we did Labour leaks. No one was talking about Labour leaks because it was kind of like you can't talk about it. So I got all these people who talk about it, apart from Jeremy Corbyn didn't talk about it. And then as I sort of say, I like old people who are neglected. So I was like, let's do Dennis Skinner. And then I thought about, like, say, Diane Abbott's celebration of her being an MP. I thought, you know, Black Lives Matter was going on. I thought, why don't we actually celebrate Diane Abbott instead of just talking about Black Lives Matter? Why don't we show Black Lives Matter? So I didn't say anything about that in the actual show, but my feeling was we need to celebrate Diane Abbott here. And so many people just sent these messages in to say how much he's inspired them. And when she was played these messages, she was so genuinely moved by the reception she had that I'd never forget that show. It was so moving to me. And she sent me messages afterwards like that she had not got over the amount of support she had and how amazing it was. And similarly, the Jeremy Corbyn birthday show, I mean, that people loved to celebrate Jeremy Corbyn's birthday, and Ken Loach as well. Ken Loach was I think he thought he was coming on to talk about politics or something, and I just said, no, we're going to do a show just about how much people love your films, and these are what they say about your films. And I'm not sure he was that keen on it because he's not that kind of person. He doesn't really want people to play his trumpet, but it was great to get people to see the positive things that people have done and celebrate things. I mean, I've seen loads of Zoom shows where they're saying how bad everything is. I don't know if that's really helpful. I think we can have a bit of it's all pretty bad, but we can also have to say what we've got and what we've achieved and get people to be more upbeat. I mean, the last two shows, one of the two last shows I was doing was just about the Labour Party's bureaucracy and Labour Party funding and stuff like that. And I thought that would be a difficult sell. But because I had the different people all over the country who could talk about their experiences, it worked pretty well. And yeah, that's kind of like the story of Stay Home for Labour. But it had to end when Johnson decided to kind of end lockdown for some reason.
I think it's like, it speaks a lot for your attitude towards people and your kindness towards people, that was your thought, you know, we're going to bring people together. People are locked down, but you must have met more Labour members than anyone. You know, you must have met more Grassroots members than anyone other than maybe Jeremy Corbyn, for example, because you've got all these connections all around the country, and you've got all these connections with politicians. So it's really good to see all these people coming together and celebrating the positivity and celebrating and thanking people for what they've done. It's a really nice thing to do. Another thing I think is a real is a real gift of yours is the ability to bring those people together, because when we had you in Sedgefield, we had Stand Up for Labour in Sedgefield, we had people who were very much, and we have dyed-in-the-wool Blairites, and that's not used as an insult, that's like how they would self-identify. And then we have people who are very much socialist, maybe in Marxist tradition, and we had them all together in a room getting on really, really well with one another and enjoying what happened. And I've noticed that you did that on the the Stay Home for Labour calls.
Yeah. You
had one where you had NEC members, where I believe it was Gorinda Josan, John Landsman, and a former NEC member, Anne Black, and all those three would have been considered to have been from different factions. How do you go about bringing these people together?
Well, I just get sort of about that is when I was in my first constituency I was at, I noticed that some of the members tried to put on public meetings. Well, they did put these on, and they were Labour talks or Labour listens or something they were called. Right? And it was just Labour people talking to the audience, and the audience were all Labour members. There was no one from outside coming in, no one at all. No, there was no public there. It was like Labour, and I thought, you're not going to get anyone here if you don't have more opinions, different diversity of opinions. So I did it. I did this this public meeting. They didn't like it. I did this public meeting where I invited the Tory MP, the head of the NHS locally, a Labour councillor, a Labour MP, and a balance of it. And it was about the local hospitals being threatened with closure. So I wrote to the Tory MP and I said, look, might help being called Crispin, I don't know, in this story, but I just said, can you just give us, can you just take away our anxieties about this hospital closure thing? Can you just come to a meeting and just tell people everything's going to be okay? Because there's a lot of people are worried about this. And she was, yeah, okay. And then I said to the NHS director, I said, well, the Tory MP's coming, and she's going to say everything's okay. Will you just come along and say that with her? He said, sure. And I told the Labour people that, this Tory's there and she's saying everything's okay. What do you think? No, it's not. I'm coming on. We had all of them turned up, and it was the best meeting because people could get the ideas out. Why should we be scared to listen to Tories? If our ideas are the best ideas, we shouldn't be scared to invite them and talk to them and actually debate them. So similarly, if we're going to talk in the party between socialist members and more social democrat, why not just, if we believe that we're right, then why don't we just speak instead of keeping ourselves separated? It doesn't do us any favours to just talk to each other, whether it's in the Labour Party or it's within a faction of the Labour Party. We have to have the belief in ourselves that what our ideas are about are strong enough, and we can, So inviting Anne Black and Gorinda was not difficult. I found it harder actually to invite people who you may think were more on my side of the party, because some of them were thinking, what's this all about? What's the guy trying to do? I find it quite strange that people don't want to actually have a discussion about what their opinions are and try and you've got to learn from each other. You've got to learn what the other side's saying so you can counter it. And if you don't hear their argument, then you're never going to win it. But also, as I say, we're all born equal. We're all equal. I'm not superior to anyone because I have an opinion that they don't have. If that's what Labour members should not have that feeling that they're superior to other people because their opinions are better than them. Just as they shouldn't believe that they're superior to other people because they're class. Opinions are just opinions. We have to go out there and try and show that socialism, as we talked about earlier, that's the key to what we're looking for. And we don't have to hide from each other about it. Sorry, I sound a bit like I'm a sort of know-all there. I'm not really. Or I just think I don't think we should demonize anyone. We shouldn't demonize people. Sometimes we can turn them around. They might be quite helpful to us.
I think you sound anything but a know-all. That's the opposite of being a know-all, isn't it? It's the kind of thing. It's just my opinion. I'm just trying to get it. I think it's right because it's my opinion. But prove me wrong, or try and convince the other person that you're right. I think you're absolutely right in that regard. Is that what you're trying to do at the moment with Labour Grassroots? So you've got a new project. It's called Labour Grassroots. Would you mind telling me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's kind of by osmosis, the move to the stay home for Labour, and then finding out that the power of the programme was actually the number of different voices. It just made me think, a lot of things are becoming clear to me after so many years in the party, but one of them is members are being demonised as stupid, cranky, nutters, weirdos, all other kinds of horrible names that they get. That's good publicity to keep the power of the party centrally. If the members are all seen as nutters, then we will, it makes perfect sense to leave the money and the resources with those who know best in the middle, right? I want to show that actually the members know best, and counter that propaganda, because if I can actually prove the members know best, and also that the central party is not behaving in the way that it should be, we might move the balance of power back to the grassroots. And the grassroots is the only way Labour can win, because the Tories have tied up the media and they've got more money and they can put more posters up and they can win social media with more adverts and more manipulation of people's opinions. We can win on the ground with people on each road who knock on doors and are there every month of the year and are always saying, we're from the Labour Party, tell us what your issues are. We are here. We're not just some people who had put out Facebook adverts or glossy leaflets. That's the only way Labour can win. Labour has to have a different energy to the Tories. It's like it's a really bad example, but it's like some kind of heavyweight boxer fighting a martial artist. If the martial artist is only allowed to box, then he won't win. But if he can use his own art, then he will. We can't win playing the same, fighting the same game. We're trying to replicate them. We've got a central office in London. We've got people who wear suits and go around trying to be clever on PR and stuff like that. It doesn't work. We can't win like that. We have to win the Labour way, which is on the ground, talking normally to people, not spinning, being enthusiastic, helping other people, just being who we say we are when we'll be in government. It's not that complicated. So yeah, I'm trying to do this Labour grassroots because I think we have to project what's true, which is that the Labour grassroots is full of great people who are making massive contributions to their community and also have really good ideas about how we can win. So I want to counter the media within the left that says Westminster is where it's all at, because that's the other thing. I mean, if you look at the left-wing media, they're all focused on Westminster gossip, and I don't think that helps to give the impression that that isn't where the power is, where it should all be. They want us to talk about cabinet reshuffles and right-wing MPs who say the wrong thing, because they think that if they give us that idea, then we won't think about changing the party.
I think you're absolutely right in the fact that the way that Labour is going to win is through hope, and also by making sure that people, when they vote for the Labour Party, they are voting for their friend, they're voting for their family member, they're voting for the person who has been delivering medicine to the nana through the COVID crisis, that kind of thing. Those people who are part of their community. It can't be this abstract figure of a leader that they're voting for. It's got to be the people in the community, and that's what it's got to be about. And the only way to make sure that happens is to give those people that power to get that message across and saying, you really, really are voting for me. I'm a Labour Party member, so therefore, I'm involved. And, if you trust me, then you can vote for Labour. I think that's definitely where we need to go. So I'm going to sum up now, but there's a couple of things I really want to know. Who is the funniest politician you've had on? So politicians, sometimes they were a little bit of did they give stand-up a go themselves?
Yeah, Sadiq Khan thought he was funny. And he actually told some interview, he said he was a stand-up comedian for Stand Up for Labour. He started making out that he was employed as a comedian, and I had to tell some comedy website that wasn't true. He had quite long kind of stories that had a shaggy dog stories, you know, with a really lame kind of punchline. Stephen Pound was an MP until I think 2017, maybe 2019, I can't remember. He was quite funny. He actually put a motion in Parliament about Bill Hicks, that they should celebrate Bill Hicks. He was a real comedy fan, and he loved the sound of his own voice. And he's quite a colourful character. I think he was a merchant seaman or something. And he supports Fulham as well, which is my team. So I could talk to him about Fulham, and so we got on a bit. He's not really a Corbyn supporter, but he was all right.
Stephen Pound wins it then for the funniest MP you've had on. So, and what has been the best gig that you think you've done? Like, you know, maybe split this into like crowd. So what's been the best crowd you've had, and what's been the best lineup you think you've had, the lineup that worked? Because I know it's really unfair to say who's your favourite comedian out of all those people, because they're all good for different reasons. You've got some really talented comedians that work with you, but what's been your best moments?
Well, the biggest crowd, I think, was 3,000 at the Bournemouth conference for the CWU, but there was also one that did 1,800 in Bristol at the height of Corbyn's, when was that, 2016, February 2016. We had a lot of 1,000 people, 1,000 capacity crowds full up. I mean, God, there's so many good gigs, but the one that I think of most fondly recently was the one in northeast Derbyshire in the general election, just before the December 2019 election, where we had it's packed. It's pretty busy. It's like 250, maybe 300 people, and we had. Who did we have there? We had Steve Day, who's the only deaf comedian. That's his main tag. Is the UK's only deaf comedian, but he's not heard of any other one. That's his joke. We had we had Justin Morehouse. He was amazing. He knew how to do the jokes about northeast Derbyshire, Sheffield, Rotherham, and Doncaster. He had all these towns down to fine art. They all loved his local references, so that was perfect. And then Barbara Nice was on after the interval, and she just had everyone dancing to all these songs, like just one song after another, and they were all getting up and doing little dancing, and everyone was in the crowd was just dancing. And then Grace Petrie was the last act on, and it was all political, rabble-rousing kind of stuff, and everyone was loving that, and it kind of had something for everyone, that gig. And then at the very end, we got Jeremy Corbyn on the telephone, on the mic, had the mic and Jeremy Corbyn talking, and everyone was just totally bonkers. They'd been blown apart by this lineup, and I was buzzing after that one. It's a shame they didn't win that seat, because I really like Chris Peace as well. And you know, Ian and the Bakers sponsored it, so Ian Hodson was there. It was a great night. Yeah, there's so many of them, but I couldn't. I mean, that stuck out for me recently.
And the final thing I'd like to bring up, thanks for that, by the way, it was really good. The final thing I'd like to bring up is you're planning on standing for the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party, and you're looking for nominations for that at the moment from different constituency Labour parties around the country. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I'm a bit torn about this, because I don't want to. I don't know. I'm a bit torn about this because I don't. Because there's these slates, yeah. There are these slates, and I'm not on a slate. And I can see that there are some people on one slate that I really probably wouldn't want to be on the NEC. So I'd rather the other slate maybe win. But then at the same time as that, I don't think either of the slates are talking about the real problem that needs to be addressed in the Labour Party, which is the funding of local parties, lack of transparency and the lack of accountability. And both slates are leaving those issues out of it and talking about what I call superfluous things like policy. I mean, the manifesto is not going to be drawn up for 4 years. The next NEC is in 2 years. They've got no point in talking about policy because policy won't come up. So I'm kind of thinking, I want to make this election of the NEC about what really should be going on. And I don't know if I should just really annoy people and stand for the NEC or just say, no, I'll let the left slate or whatever win or try and let them win. And they might not do anything about what I think is important. So I'm a bit torn about it. At the moment, I'm trying to get the left slate to talk about issues. That's my ambition, is to try and get the left slate to deal with those issues I talked about. If they put that on their policy of why they're standing, I think they'd have a great chance of winning if they talked about the issues that need addressing instead of the ones that don't need addressing. But I've said too much now. I'm not a good politician. I shouldn't say things like that.
Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need people who aren't being politicians and are just honest and, you know, hardworking and kind. Maybe that's what we need in our political lives, a little bit more honesty. Also, it's a single transferable vote. So if you didn't get elected, then your second place would become the vote. It's like if someone put you first. So it's not quite as cut and dried as it has been in the past. The slates aren't full. You know, they've only got 6. So, you know, maybe there's a conversation to be had at some point there with.
Well, yeah, it's a bit confusing. But I have been accused already by people of trying to split the slate, even though I'm not even near to we're not even near the ballot papers arriving or anything. It's a bit of I don't know, it's a bit of a headache.
Yeah,
but there is one thing I would like to mention, though. I'll just say before you finish, is that there's going to be a Dennis Skinner single. The Dennis Skinner show on Stay Home for Labour, he watched it apparently, and he liked the single, the song that Rob Johnson sang at the end. He liked it apparently. So on the back of that, we're going to put a single out about Dennis Skinner, and my hope is that everyone will promote it on the left. And if we got Dennis Skinner in the charts, it's not a Christmas chart thing. Maybe we get a chance, maybe it might get in the charts, but Dennis Skinner in the charts would be a really good boost. We need stuff like that just keep us going a bit.
I think that would be brilliant. So we'd be happy to promote that at Socialist Think Tank, and I'm sure a lot of other organisations will be as well. Thank you so much for being on, Crispin. It's always an absolute pleasure, and thanks for everything you do, because you talked about thanking other people for all they do for the Labour Party, but on behalf of, I'm sure, a great number of people, thank you for what you do, because, you know, giving us that hope, giving us that little bit of laughter and those funds that you've built up, you've done a really remarkable thing and also cared about people at the same time. So thank you, I'm sure, on behalf of absolutely loads of people.
Oh, thank you, Paul.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care. And I think.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. And the other things, I know I look knackered, but I did get up at 5 this morning because my son was up early. So.
Well, I'm gonna let you go and get some sleep. But what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to remind people that if they've liked this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. because that really, really helps the channel. Okay, well, thank you very much again, Crispin, and I will see you soon.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Keep the red flag flying here.